This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Heather Sells. Doctors at Walter Reed Medical Center say President Trump continues to improve and he could come home as soon as today. Meanwhile, the Trump campaign has already announced a new effort to pick up the slack on the campaign trail until the president returns. Dale Hurd has the story.
With President Trump apparently much improved but still not fully recovered from COVID-19, his re-election campaign announced the launch of Operation MAGA. It's described as a full marshaling of top-level surrogates, campaign coalitions, and Trump supporters to rally behind the president and carry the campaign forward until the president returns to the trail. Vice President Mike Pence will be out front more, making in-person campaign appearances in key states, along with members of the First Family. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany tweeted that she has also tested positive and will work remotely. But White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows says President Trump is ready to get back to a normal work schedule. And Trump certainly acted hale and hearty when he tweeted out a video Sunday.
I learned a lot about COVID. I learned it by really going to school. This is the real school. This isn't the let's read the book school. And I get it.
Then the president got into a car for a surprise drive past supporters at the hospital. Although he was wearing a mask in the back seat, his physician at Walter Reed suggested the president put his Secret Service detail at risk of contracting COVID.
I don't know what the benefits of this political stunt were, but I do know what the risks were. And my concern is that perhaps the Secret Service agents that were inside don't know the full risk of what they were up against there.
And White House physician Sean Conley says he gave the president supplemental oxygen twice.
I was concerned for possible rapid progression of the illness. I recommended the president we try some supplemental oxygen, see how he'd respond.
Meanwhile, the Biden campaign says it's pulling negative ads while the president is ill.
I don't want to be attacking the president and the first lady now because they're now have contracted coronavirus.
Trump supporters across the country are praying for his recovery, from outside Walter Reed to Trump Tower in Manhattan and even in Huntington Beach, California.
I love our president. I think we need him back in office for the second term.
And in Jerusalem, the chief rabbi of the Western Wall prayed for the speedy recovery of the president during a priestly blessing ceremony. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
And this just in, Pastor Greg Laurie, he's the pastor of Harvest Christian Fellowship in California, apparently has tested positive for COVID. We're joined now by CBN News medical reporter Laurie Johnson. Laurie, I want to ask you about Pastor Greg Laurie first, because he was at that Rose Garden event where they were celebrating really the nomination of the Supreme Court nominee, but also a lot of people who were there, it was outdoors, have tested positive. What do we know about outdoor events and the risk of spreading COVID?
Well, we don't know for sure if that was the super spreader event, but it looks like it because so many people who were there have now tested positive for COVID-19. And doctors have been telling us all along, Heather, that it's not just wearing a mask, it's not just social distancing, it's not just being outside, but we need to do all of these things together. And for example, if you look at the video from that ceremony, yes, they were outside, but a lot of people were not social distance and were not wearing a mask. And we have been told by Trump insiders that there were other events, such as when he was preparing for the debate, when they were in a closed, unventilated room, and there were no masks. And we know that, for example, Governor Chris Christie was in that meeting, and he has now tested positive for COVID and has even checked himself into the hospital because we know he has some risk factors.
Right. Well, so many concerns. When it comes to President Trump right now, there's a lot of concern about a second wave, if you will, when you have COVID. So what will doctors be keeping an eye on today and going forward with him?
So what you're talking about with a second wave, as they say, is when patients take a turn for their worse, and oftentimes it's very sudden and very severe. They usually do that between days 5 and days 10 after the onset of symptoms. So what we've been told is President Trump first started exhibiting symptoms on Thursday. So day 5 would be tomorrow. So yes, doctors are going to be keeping a very close eye on him. Even if he's at the White House, he'll still have a team of experts, a team of physicians watching him, monitoring his vital signs. But one thing that's very interesting to notice, he's already received some of the big guns, some of the heavy hitters as far as treatments that a lot of people get if they do take that turn for the worse after day 5. I'm talking about dexamethasone and remdesivir.
And what criteria will the doctors be looking at as they evaluate whether he's ready to be discharged or not?
Two main things that doctors consider whether to discharge a COVID-19 patient. Number one, have they been without a fever for 48 hours? And what we've been told is President Trump does check that box. And also without supplemental oxygen for 48 hours. And we're told that he also hasn't had supplemental oxygen since Saturday. So that will be 48 hours if he hasn't received any since then.
Okay. And what would be the criteria for him to be able to safely go in the public again and do rallies and campaign events?
Well, the criteria would be the same for him as it is with everyone, which means we have to make sure that he is no longer positive for COVID-19. That means he would be tested and get a negative test, then tested again 24 hours later, another negative test. And some experts say we really need to do that test 3 times in a row.
All right. Well, Lori Johnson, thanks very much.
My pleasure.
A lot going on.
Yes.
And Trump's diagnosis is also sparking concern politically. Joining us now for more is CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody. David, we received a lot of confusing, even contradictory messages over the weekend from the president's team. Why is that, and what can we expect going forward?
Well, let's dial this back just for a moment. I think with really any White House, but particularly this one, you're going to get a slow walk of a lot of information. And I understand that, the public has a right to know, and it is we the people, and in the president serving the people. But this White House especially has been pretty slow to walk information along. And I think that's exactly what we're getting now. Now, we're eventually getting to kind of exactly what happened. But let's remember, you've got a president of the United States who sees being sick as being weak, right? And so you've got that. And so the doctors are trying to kind of figure out exactly about making sure they give the right information, the correct information, at the same time, trying to put the best possible spin on it. And this is not a time for spin, clearly, but I think this is what's been going on and why we're seeing a bit of conflicting messages here.
Right. Well, I know the public, of course, is extremely interested. And now the president's campaign has launched a new initiative, Operation MAGA, to try and keep the campaign moving forward in the president's absence. What can you tell us about this, and how do you think it's going to play?
Well, it's kind of like Operation Warp Speed. We heard that about COVID from a White House perspective. This Operation MAGA is to try and warp speed the campaign full throttle ahead to get all surrogates on deck. I've been talking to campaign advisors who say, look, we've all got to pick up the slack because the commander-in-chief is down right now. And so I think there's just a sense that there's going to be, we've seen women for bus tours for Trump, and we've seen a lot of different things going on, a lot of surrogates all over the country. They're just going to double and redouble those efforts. It's going to be a lot of work by a lot of campaign folks. But in essence, that's what Operation MAGA means. We'll see how much it can pay off. The bottom line is there's only one and only Trump, for good and for bad.
Right. So speaking of the bottom line, how do you see this illness, this sickness affecting him? He had already been trailing the vice president. What's your outlook at this point in time?
Well, listen, Heather, I got to tell you, if anybody knows how this is going to all shake out, we have no idea. I mean, that's just the truth, right? I mean, let's just start there. Having said that, here's what I've learned in covering President Trump, actually Donald Trump, for 10 plus years and doing over 20 interviews with him. Don't count him out. Every time you think that he is down for the count, if you will, he seems to come back. So, everything on the kitchen sink has been thrown against him. He's got COVID. Now we know Kayleigh McEnany, his press secretary, has COVID. I can go down the list. A lot of October surprises coming out about his tax returns and X, Y, and Z stories, the Melania tapes, all of this. So you would think conventional wisdom would suggest that he is done, not to mention the polling is he's down plus 14. But let's also remember, the plus 14 number that Joe Biden is up right now in polling against Trump is a national number, number one. And number two, Hillary Clinton was also up, let me think, plus 14 right about this same time in 2016. Could this be a second time this happens with Donald Trump in terms of beating the odds. We'll see. If he does it this time, it'll be even more impressive than 2016.
He could possibly be the comeback kid, if you will.
For sure.
All right, David Brody, never a dull moment. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
And be sure to stay with CBN News for continuing coverage on President Trump's COVID-19 recovery right here on the CBN News Channel and on CBNNews.com and our CBN News app. Well, in other news, another win for former Covington High student Nick Sandmann. A U.S. district court has denied 4 media outlets their motions to dismiss lawsuits brought against them by Sandmann. Sandmann sued 7 media outlets altogether. His attorney argued each defamed him in their 2019 reporting of his interaction with Native American Nathan Phillips. It happened in Washington, D.C., where the March for Life and an Indigenous Peoples March were held at the same time. Initial media reports falsely suggested video showed Sandmann, who was wearing a red Make America Great Again hat, had intentionally tried to intimidate Phillips. Sandmann reached settlements with the Washington Post and CNN. The denied motions were from the New York Times, Rolling Stone, ABC News, and CBN News. Well, moving now to the latest in the Atlantic hurricane season. A second tropical storm has formed in the Gulf of Mexico, and it is expected to become a hurricane by the end of this week. Tropical storm Gamma has stalled just north of Mexican's Yucatan Peninsula after lashing the coast with near hurricane force winds and rain, killing at least 6 people and forcing thousands from their homes. Meanwhile, the newly formed tropical storm Delta is endangering the Cayman Islands and Cuba. The National Hurricane Center says Delta could bring winds around 100 miles per hour and would likely make landfall on the U.S. Gulf Coast on Friday. Coming up, Election Day, less than a month away, and this year things could look different as the states begin their mail-in voting. We'll have more on that when we come back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
A record number of Americans are expected to vote by mail this November. In Massachusetts, mail-in ballots began to arrive at the homes of about 200,000 registered voters over the past few days. Secretary of the Commonwealth William Galvin is urging voters to return their ballots as soon as possible and also reassuring safety for next month's in-person voting.
We're all very cognizant of the continued presence in our midst of the coronavirus. The unsettling numbers of the last few days have surely raised the issue once again for many voters about the safety of any activity. I want to assure you of the effort that we've gone to make sure that November 3rd will be safe. First and foremost, we have worked with our local election officials to make sure that they have larger spaces. We've instructed them to find as large a space as they can.
And as states mail out ballots in bulk, President Trump has raised concerns about the potential for voter fraud. CBN's White House correspondent Ben Kennedy reports.
State and local leaders are encouraging voters to cast their ballots by mail. It'll help reduce crowds in polling places and help prevent the spread of COVID. But some feel it creates new opportunities to commit fraud. Each state offers mail-in absentee voting, though 1/3 requires a reason for voting by mail. In some states, a ballot is automatically mailed to every eligible voter, which the president is warning against.
The biggest threat to this election is these unsolicited ballots sent out by the millions.
Colorado, Hawaii, Oregon, Washington, and Utah conduct elections entirely by mail, though voters can still vote in person if they choose. And according to polling, 46% of registered voters prefer it. Right now, 5 states conduct elections entirely by mail-in prior to the pandemic with no cases or no major cases of fraud. Does that success not give the president confidence in mail-in voting?
So those states have had time and a history of doing having a workable system, and one that has been done for many years, for many election cycles, to move the entire country to mass mail-in voting all at once and have an entirely new system, and do that in just a few short months is an untenable and an unworkable proposition.
Not all mail-in ballots will be counted by Election Day. For some states, it could take days, a week, or even longer to tally the final results. Massachusetts, Mississippi, and Maryland do not permit the processing of mailed ballots until after the polls close on Election Day. All of this prompting calls to vote in person.
Line spacing, wearing masks, sanitation stations, inside and out. If they do that, you can vote safely in person. So I think this rush to vote by mail is unwise and not a good idea.
According to data from the Election Assistance Commission, an independent agency of the U.S. government, some 28 million mail-in ballots went missing in the 4 elections held between 2012 and 2018. Is that a cause for concern?
Well, it could be a cause for concern for voters because they want to know if they send their ballot or request their ballot, where is it? And so there are many states and counties that provide a service called ballot tracking for the voters.
Investigations show voter fraud does exist, with recent cases in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, West Virginia, California, Illinois, and at least 6 other states.
They can make forgeries of these ballots. They can do things that will blow your mind. And the Democrats know it's wrong. They know it's going to end up being a disaster.
Security measures to protect mail-in voting include hand-marked paper ballots. 31 states conduct signature verification, and 8 states require a witness signature in addition to the voter's signature.
We want to have clean and fair elections. The bigger issue is that ballots may not be counted because of some error on the part of voters, or the Postal Service doesn't get the ballot back in time.
Now, Palmer recommends people start the voting by mail or absentee early. You can even call your local election office to make sure they receive your ballot. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, Washington.
And for more political coverage and the latest from our nation's capital, be sure to tune into Faith Nation this evening right here on the CBN News Channel. Up next, why a billboard in Canada encouraging small families is receiving backlash and what is behind the message.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
A controversial billboard in Vancouver, Canada is garnering attention. A nonprofit organization called the World Population Balance released several ads in September with the hope of combating climate change. Their solution is population control. One of the billboards shows an African-American baby above the text, "The most loving gift you can give your first child is not to have another." Other ads include headlines like "We choose child free" and "Traffic congestion starts at conception." And joining us now for more is Dan Andros with faithwire.com. Dan, tell us a little more about what you know about this group and this ad campaign.
Yeah, well, the group is, it's not a parody group, because honestly, that was my first thought when we caught wind of these billboards and these ads and this marketing making the rounds on social media. And the group is real. It's called World Population Balance, as you said, and they have been out there for some time now and advocating basically one-child policies wherever they can. And they have been recently, looking to create more of a push. And they're tying it to climate change, and they've tested ads. These were in Vancouver, the ones that started to go viral, but they've also done test runs in Minneapolis, where they're based, and also in Denver. So this is something that they're looking to push. And again, I thought it was a parody until I looked into this group, but they're absolutely real, and they absolutely believe this.
Right. And what do you know about how these billboards have been received?
Well, so far they were not received well on social media, and there was a lot of criticism for very clear reasons. Particularly the one with the ad, as you mentioned there, that was pretty much blatantly racist. I don't know how they could have possibly missed that in their copy editing. It was a minority child with "Hey, don't have more children" was the message, which is clearly a racist message. And so they actually took that one down because they said it was unintended and not what they meant by the message. But they're very serious about the one-child policy for everyone. And so initially, the reaction has not been good.
Some critics say that one-child policies often lead to increases in forced abortions, sterilizations. What are you hearing from pro-life groups about this, Dan?
Yeah, well, over on FaithWire, we talked to some organizations, and they talked about how we value life as Christians. And they said that these billboards go and run in direct contradiction of God's mandate to go forth and multiply. So from a Christian perspective and a pro-life perspective, these ads are in direct opposition to what we believe.
Wow. And it sounds like this campaign has plans to continue these ads elsewhere. This is just perhaps a pilot case.
Yeah, it is. And, it's hard to say, what will happen going forward, but they're going to keep pushing. And I think what's interesting to me is the tie to climate change, because that is something people are being increasingly alarmist about. And so when you become alarmist about it and you propose drastic solutions and say the world's going to end in 12 years if we don't do something on climate, policies like this, which, you know, are very extreme policies, can start to be taken more seriously. So while it hasn't been well received yet, I think if they continue to try this, tying it to climate change, you might see things change.
Yeah, it can cease to be normalized, if you will, if you repeat the message. All right. Well, Dan Andros with FaithWire, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And you can catch FaithWire right here on the CBN News Channel tonight at 9:30 Eastern. After the break, how people in the Philippines celebrated their four-legged friends on World Animal Day. Stay with us.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Pet owners in the Philippines had their pets blessed via a drive-through blessing ceremony on Sunday in celebration of World Animal Day. Pet owners in Manila lined up in their cars, eagerly awaiting the annual tradition. A Catholic priest blessed various cats, dogs, and birds with holy water. Organizers said they conducted the drive-through blessing this year to ensure social distancing during the pandemic. World Animal Day also coincides with the Catholic celebration of the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of animals.
It's very important for us then to have our pet blessed because we feel like our pet talaga is really part of our family. And of course, we really want the best for his health too.
And that is it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Hope you have a great day.